All right, today's video is going to be a little bit different. I got a few questions that came in asking about my watch collection, what's my sentimental value behind them, and when they should buy their first Rolex. So that's what I'm going to share with you today is basically my favorite and most sentimental 3 Rolexes that I have, the story behind each one, and then when you should actually buy your first Rolex if you haven't bought one yet. And is it actually something you should do? So this is just something I think is interesting. I'm interested about it. So growing up, I think Rolexes, for a lot of people, were this achievement, this thing that was kind of unattainable. I remember I was, I think, in Toronto with my dad, and I saw these Rolexes, they obviously were fake Rolexes on the street, and I was just attracted to it, right? I was attracted to the beauty, the design, whatever it was. I was somewhat drawn to this watch, and I don't think I knew what Rolex was, but I remember, my dad being like, okay, well, it's your money. So I think I paid like $100 or something for this fake watch, and I wore it for a little bit, and I was probably like 12 years old, and it just didn't feel right though. It didn't feel like I earned it. It didn't feel like it was something that I connected to, because it was just something that was a knockoff, right? And it wasn't that meaningful to me, so I stopped kind of wearing it. But that was my first interaction with nice watches, or I guess fake nice watches. And it always stuck with me though that these watches had some type of immediate appeal to me. For some reason, the aesthetics behind it pulled me in, and I just kind of went on with my life. And I remember growing up, my dad wasn't really a fancy guy. He was very logical, wouldn't spend his money on things that didn't make financial sense, right? And I remember I was a little bit older. I can't remember exactly how old I was when it happened, but I remember my dad did very well one year. He was a insurance salesman as well, and he earned, right, the prize of being the #1 salesman for a company in the entire country. And he was rewarded and given all these accolades and all this stuff at this conference out in Colorado. And the company, one day when he woke up in the morning, they had a gift box waiting for him outside of his hotel room. And he opened the box up and opened up this box specifically, a Rolex Datejust, right? So I have to get my head out of here, if you can see it. Focus in on it. But that was the watch that my dad had earned from being the top salesman in the country. And it was amazing when he came home. He was so proud about this watch that he wore it all the time. He told everybody the story about how he was the #1 salesman, and they rewarded with this this Rolex for him, because he would have never bought a Rolex for himself, but the sentimental value behind earning and being rewarded really meant a lot. It means it showed to him that he had put in work, he had done the difficult things, and he was rewarded for his efforts, right? We all want to be rewarded for things that we do, and that Rolex to him was very special, was very meaningful. And unfortunately, if you know my story, about a little over 5 years ago now, my dad was tragically killed on a motorcycle accident. And when he passed away, I was obviously very attached to my father, and my brother and my sister also knew that as well, and they knew how much the watch meant to me, because I was in the same industry, and it was the same kind of it meant a lot knowing that that was an achievement that he had earned, and it meant a lot to me to keep this watch as my own. And luckily my brother and my sister knew that, and they were happy to allow me to keep the watch. And I wore it proudly for many years, and I still wear it often. But I never really thought about really Rolexes or watches or anything high end until after that point. And after a few years of me wearing it, and at this point I'd already started my own insurance agency. I already started my real estate investment company. I had done fairly well for myself, but all of my money, I was very logical, like my father, in the sense that I really didn't spend my money on anything that was of luxury to myself. I was literally still living in one of my 2-unit flat buildings at this point. So I hadn't really rewarded myself for any of the efforts that I had put in, and I didn't work for anybody else. I was the boss, so I wasn't going to be rewarded by anybody else to, reward myself for the achievements that I may have had. So a few years after, my dad passed, obviously a few of my friends, they had all gotten into watches. They had, done well for themselves, and one of my buddies specifically, Josh, he is a very, very big watch collector, and I always admired his watches. I just never really was in that mindset of rewarding myself for anything that I've achieved. But then one day, I just thought, I'm like, you know what? I need to reward myself. I need to allow myself to be part of the luxury that I had aspired to, right? The Rolex has a certain appeal to that you achieve something. You put in effort and you were dedicated and disciplined enough to actually do something. And I remember my buddy Josh, actually, I told him that I was looking for one, and I'd be interested if he ever, got allocated one, or that he didn't want, and let me know, because I was interested at that point. And shortly thereafter, he actually called me and he said, "Hey, I know you were looking for a Rolex. Why not the most famous Rolex, most well-known, most well-copied Rolex, which is the Submariner." And he said, "I have one. Would you like it?" I said, "I would love one." And obviously I had to pay for it. I bought it from him, and it was a little bit over what the retail is, because it is what it is, and that's what happens when you don't go to a retailer. They're sought after pieces, so they do go up a little bit in value. So you pay for what it's going for. And this is the watch that I first bought for myself as a reward for the things that I have achieved. So this is my Rolex Submariner. And as you can tell, it's a beautiful watch, well-made watch. Obviously, these watches are fairly expensive, and the actual utility behind the watch is not really useful, right? Like your phone can do anything better than a watch can do nowadays, but we still have a sentimental value to it. There's a story behind these watches. There's a feeling of satisfaction, achievement that you can actually go into and remember when you bought it, right? There's not many pieces in this world, or things in this world, that can motivate you and give you some type of emotional satisfaction about what you have achieved in this world, and Rolexes do that. And I was very grateful for Josh being able to look out for me, and that watch means a lot to me. And then since that point, I bought a few more Rolexes, and they all have some type of sentimental value to it. But one of my favorite watches is the one I'm wearing right now, which I bought last year. And it was my first Rolex that was in allocation from an actual authorized dealer. And I wanted to celebrate a new purchase, a new real estate project that I had purchased down in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. And I went into the authorized dealer and I told him the story about my father, my journey along this entrepreneurial path, and I met some good people. And I flew back home. They didn't have anything available at the time, and we kept in touch. And then I think less than a month later, they called me and they said, "Hey, Matt, are you interested in a Datejust?" I said, "Definitely, because the Datejust is what my dad earned, right? And that Datejust had a sentimental meaning to me that I could now attach a new project that I had achieved with the same type of watch that my father had earned, and I could reward myself with that. And when they called me, they said, would you like the blue dial with with diamonds on the dial, on the indices? And I didn't know that I would love diamonds. Wasn't really much of a diamond guy, but after getting the watch and seeing the watch in person, it is absolutely my favorite watch, and it means a lot to me. So hopefully you can see this. It's a beautiful on the Jubilee bracelet. And yeah, that watch, this watch means a lot to me. And it was an amazing feeling being able to reward myself for all the years of discipline and hard work that I put in to create a life that I currently have. And this watch that I was able to buy for myself has a lot of attachment to my father's watch that I was able to kind of attach the meaning behind earning it for myself, and then also what everything that I learned from my father about being frugal and being able to buy things that can have some type of emotional attachment to keep you on the path to remember why you're doing this and why you work so hard and why you're so dedicated. So a lot of people ask me, when should I buy my first watch? And I usually say, well, it's really up to you, and it's up to what your objectives are. So like for me, I wanted financial freedom more than anything else. That was my main objective, and buying something that did not create cash flow or freedom in my life was just a big mistake, because that was the objective that I desired. And if you have an objective that is different than that, you know, if you're driven by significance or something like that, then you might buy it sooner because that's what your main value is. But I think having the freedom first, right? If you watch any of my other videos, being able to create the financial freedom will give you both control and significance in your life. So that's the route I usually tell people to go, is hold off on buying something that does not create freedom in your life and actually becomes a liability. Because I would never buy any of these things if they had any type of effect on my mental cost or my financial cost. Like if I couldn't afford to pay cash for these and it would have no impact on my actual lifestyle, I would have never bought it, right? So these were purchases that I could have bought many, many years ago, but they had an emotional attachment to a certain point in my life that I said, now I can easily afford it. It's not going to make any difference in my bank account, but also I can now reward myself, and I can have a story to tell about these watches and when I wear them, right? Versus, so a lot of people say like Rolexes are great conversation starters, which they are. However, if you have nothing to say at the end of the conversation or the beginning of the conversation, then you should probably hold off on getting that Rolex and start doing other stuff so you can actually have a deep conversation with the people that will want to be attracted to the person that's wearing that type of watch. So don't just I always say this, like there's so many young kids out there that are trying to get these expensive watches or expensive things because they believe that it's going to attract a certain type of person, which it does. However, if you do not have the skills, the capabilities, and the mindset of that person that you're going to be attracting, and you're just basically being a flashy person and you have nothing of substance to provide, they immediately will not only not see you as valuable, but actually think it was a dumb decision by you to purchase something that you have not earned yet. So make sure that when you do purchase something that is a significant purchase, be the person that is capable of understanding what it takes to get it, and then also understand what story and significance it's going to have to your life that you can now share with somebody else along the journey. So these were just a few of my favorite watches, why they mean something to me. If this was interesting, if you want to learn more about watches or anything like that, or my watches specifically, or what my mindset is behind these types of luxury things, leave a comment, like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, MOVMATT. So hopefully this was at least entertaining for you. I will talk to you soon. Peace.